Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
I would like you all to give a warm welcome to our main speaker, Ilene.
Good evening. My name is Ilene, and I'm an alcoholic. I want to thank Lila for asking me to come over here and talk. I want to congratulate the Chip and birthday people. Hi, Perry. I want to thank Bob, not Mike, Bob, for his talk. Well, gee, I was sitting there thinking that I've now been sober long enough to be having a midlife crisis. I came to AA when I was 24, and now my age has flipped. I'm 42. So I used to be young. Now I'm much older. I'd like to thank Jackie for the promise of this lovely two-headed tomato down here. She said if I was good, I could have it. And so I'm really going to work for that tomato. In fact, it's right down there where I can see it, and it's inspiring me already. I said a little prayer before I got up here. I prayed to be honest. I think it's really important to be honest in Alcoholics Anonymous. I think a lot of our program is based on the principle of rigorous honesty. And, I was having a conversation last night with this fellow that I'm sponsoring. I don't ordinarily sponsor guys, but I sort of feel like I dragged him back from the precipice of Sharp's beer. And I told him there'd be no more of that if I was sponsoring him. My friend David told him that if he asked me to be a sponsor, it would be like going to military academy. I'm not really that tough, but I take this very seriously. And anyway, we were having a conversation. He has about 1.5 years of sobriety, and he's really been trying to hold it together, and it's starting to unravel. And a lot of it is because he just quit smoking. And he said, well, maybe it has something to do with that. I said, well, I think so. And anyway, we were talking, and he said that yesterday he got really pissed off, and somebody was parked in the parking spot behind the store where he works, and so he just pushed the car into the alley and left it there, and he couldn't push it back, and so I decided to share with him the little incident that happened to me a few weeks ago. And I've already talked about this from several podiums, I think even at one convention. But anyway, I recently got a Ford Explorer, the culmination of my dream of what it was this year that was going to fix me from the outside. And in fact, for the last 3 months, it has been fixing me. I have to admit it. But it comes with certain incumbent problems, like you just don't want anybody to mess with you while you're driving your new car. And anyway, I was on my way to a meeting one Saturday night, and I was turning left, and a car cut me off like at the last possible second. And I hit the brakes and my horn at the same time, and I see this hand go up in the car, and they claimed later they were flashing the peace sign. I say that they were 1 finger short, and anyway, I got around the corner, and I pulled up to the right, and I rolled down my window, and I said, it's pretty goddamn stupid to flip somebody off when you've just almost caused an accident. And the passenger in the car threw a can of Coca-Cola at my new car. So I got out, and I kicked their car. I'm 18 years sober, by the way. Anyway, that would be a pretty good end to the story, but that's not the end of the story. I go around into the alley and I park my vehicle and I check it for, damage, and there isn't any, thank God. And I'm walking down the sidewalk, and here come the two guys. They're also on their way to the meeting. And so I get into it again with them on the sidewalk, and the guy who owned the car, I said, I did make amends to him. I said, I am really sorry I kicked your car. And he said, no problem. I would have done the same thing under the same circumstances. He was really pissed at the guy who threw the can of Coca-Cola. And anyway, we went into the meeting, and it turns out the guy was a newcomer. And I'm not going to say, of course, because you see how I acted. And but he did talk to his roommate who has 12 years who suggested that he make amends to me. And the miracle of the story was that he did come up to me at the end of the meeting and make amends and offered to wash my car, which I politely declined. And I didn't say to him, I wouldn't let you touch my car. But anyway, So what I want to establish right off the bat is that this is a talk to the human beings. I believe that it is really important and something that I was told when I was new in Alcoholics Anonymous, which is that all along the way, in the last over 18 years that I've been clean and sober, I have desperately needed people with whom I could identify so that I would know that I was not alone. I needed that when I was new. I needed to be able to identify with your drinking stories. And since I've been sober, I've needed to identify with your humanity as sober members of Alcoholics Anonymous, because we are just people. We are not saints. It says right after the reading of the 12 steps in chapter 5 that no one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. That was explained to me that what that means is that nobody's even come close. But the point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines, and I believe that to be true, certainly in my case. I am willing. I don't always do brilliantly, but I'm willing. Anyway, I'm supposed to talk about what I was like, what happened, and what I'm like today. You already know what I'm like today. I'm actually pretty serene, except when operating a motor vehicle. My boss has recently asked me if I would consider a move to New York, and I think it's actually a rather good idea because I won't be driving anymore. I'll just be riding in cabs and getting upset about that. Anyhow, I was born, as I said, 42 years ago in Boise, Idaho. My parents are Jews from the Bronx, and they were just not passing through. They lived there for 10 years, and my brother and I were both born there. And when I was 4 years old, we moved to Southern California, where I grew up in the San Fernando Valley. Fortunately, I escaped 20 years ago before girls started talking like that. I don't understand that. I mean, even if they're not from the San Fernando Valley, it doesn't even matter anymore. All teenage girls talk like Vals. It's amazing. Anyhow, I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, where I was the star of my grammar school, and that was the last time in my life I achieved any sort of greatness. I peaked at 11 and a half, and then I went sort of steadily downhill. The penultimate experience of my life was being mistress of ceremonies at my grade school graduation, where I got to do square dance calls in phonetic Portuguese. My brother, who is the recipient of the PhD that I probably would have gotten if I hadn't gone so far astray, is a scientist who went down to study the rainforest in a scientific capacity. And, they do speak Portuguese in Brazil, and I offered him my expertise, but he wasn't taking me up on it. Anyhow, I was a neurotic, precocious, weird kid. I mean, I was thinking as I was driving over here that I'm still weird, and I don't know that Alcoholics Anonymous necessarily promises that we're going to be completely integrated human beings. I don't think that's really the promise. I think that we're going to be sober even if we're unintegrated and as human beings. And anyway, I was a very strange kid. I was an overly sensitive kid. Everything bothered me. I never had any self-esteem. Even though, I was really the prime achiever and the prime kiss-ass in my grammar school. I was the head of everything, and, but I was nuts, and everything used to make me weep, and everything still sort of makes me weep, but I no longer feel that it's a character defect. I mean, if I weep at the IBM commercial on TV, whose business is it but mine? And anyhow, but when I used to weep when I was a kid, my mother, whose father is an alcoholic, and I'm not up here to talk about my dysfunctional family, I think that families by their very nature are somewhat dysfunctional because we're forced to live with people that maybe we wouldn't choose in real life. And I really mean that sincerely. I mean, these weird groupings of people that live in the same house, anyhow. My mother is a very stoic woman, and I think it has a lot to do with growing up in an alcoholic home. And, you know, her advice to me when I was 4 years old was to get tough. And I think AA is filled with people who got same or similar advice because in the last 18 years, I've certainly seen a lot of, you know, so-called tough guys and gals walk through the door here, and what I find out from most of them when they get honest enough to admit what's really going on is they're afraid, the same way I was. I was just afraid. And initially, I don't even know what I was afraid of. I was just afraid. And I was self-obsessed to the point of schizophrenia, except that I didn't have a mind-body split. I had a head-body split. And my head would detach from my body, and it would follow me around everywhere I went, criticizing everything I did. And that head certainly followed me in here to Alcoholics Anonymous. And, you know, in the last few years, my head and my body have begun to make friends. After it was pointed out to me by a therapist once, he said, "Don't you think your body knows you hate it?" And I said, no, it never occurred to me that they were separate entities, but apparently they were. And anyway, I was just nuts. And, you know, when I discovered alcohol, I mean, you know, I know that there are some people who get here after having a successful career as social drinkers, and then at some point they cross over an invisible line and they're drinking alcoholically. There was no way for me to go except alcoholically. I drank alcoholically from the start. I was one of the lucky ones who immediately discovered exactly what alcohol was for. As far as I'm concerned, there is only one reason to drink alcohol, and that is to get drunk. I don't understand social drinking. I don't know why people would do it. I don't understand why they even waste booze on those people, quite frankly. You know, and it's just my feeling about it. I started out drinking Ripple, and I ended up drinking Ripple. I didn't have a long drinking career. I drank from 12 to 24, but it was certainly enough for me. And to my knowledge, I've never drank any kind of wine that required a corkscrew. So I was not fond of the taste of alcohol, but I certainly loved what alcohol did for me. It took away that unnamed fear. It made it possible for me to live in reality, something that I only now have sort of a very well, it's not really a shaky relationship, but I'm still not particularly fond of reality. Anyhow, but I live with it because I have to. And I just, you know, I have a classic 60s story. I grew up during the 60s, so when Timothy Leary said to tune in, turn on, and drop out, I know not everybody said, yes, where do I sign up, but I did. And I became a left-wing, politically correct hippie earth mama. I'm fond of saying that I was politically correct 20 years ago, but then I got over it. But I used to like not shave my legs, and you know, and I used to look down at him and go, oh, God, that is so disgusting. And I went to live on a commune in Washington with no heat, running water, or electricity because I was supposed to, you know. And, you know, my idea of roughing it is a motel with a black and white TV. You know, I don't want to live any place where I have to sleep on the ground or be cold or inconvenienced or dirty. And but nonetheless, because I was living out my sort of life role, I did that. I went up there with a guy that I knew hated me in LA, but I knew it would be different in Washington, and it certainly was. I paid my way up there and his way up there and the dog's way up there, and we hitchhiked across the state, and we landed at this place called Tolstoy Farm, and he left after a week, and the dog died of distemper, and I ended up living with this couple in Spokane, who eventually took me down to live in the woods in Oregon, and by then I'd had it. And I crossed over an invisible line somewhere in my early teens. I'm certain now, looking back, that I made a decision that whatever it was that was good or decent or worth having in life, I was never going to have it, and so why don't I just hang it up? And there are some people when they're young, they have a lot of dreams, and by the time I was about 13 or 14 years old, I really couldn't afford to have any, and so I didn't. And I was sort of at the mercy of the world, and when you're a teenage alcoholic girl, you do all kinds of things to get the things that you need in order to get loaded enough so you don't have to think about what it is that you did to get the things that you need to get loaded enough so you don't have to think about the things that you did to get the things you need. And I'm sure you're following what I'm saying here. And if you're not, I took a lot of acid and that's my excuse. But I really sort of lost touch very early on, and I understand that there are people who get here and they're alcoholic, and I believe you, and I know that somehow you manage to drink and accumulate, wives and husbands and lovers and cars and boats and ducks and dogs and college degrees and all of those things while drinking. I fully accept that you're alcoholic. I just don't understand how you did it. Because I'm one of those people. There's basically, I think, two kinds of people who come to AA. They're the ones whose lives are fairly well together, and as a result of alcohol and or drugs, those lives begin to disintegrate. And then there are the people who could never get it together in the first place, and I'm one of those. I didn't have any time, and once I started to drink, that really became my career. And I have a friend named Tracy who has great answers to the 20 questions. Is drinking affecting your job? What job? Is drinking affecting your home life? What home? And my personal favorite is drinking affecting your reputation, to which he responded, drinking is my reputation. And growing up in the 60s, I derived great benefit and pleasure from being, a big ballsy woman who could drink men under the table. I mean, I don't know why I thought that was some sort of, self-esteem kind of, builder, but I mean, it was all I had. And anyhow, I got sadder and sadder, and I am no stranger to pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. If things start getting too bad, what you do is just lower your standards. And, because I couldn't stop drinking and using, certainly, so I had to lower my standards. And, one of the story I think that's, the most descriptive of how it was for me is something that I tell not to stir any sort of prurient interest, but because I think that it really is sort of the hallmark of my drinking career. When I was 18 years old, I got gang raped, and I was really loaded that night. I used to, at the end, my favorite combination was booze and barbiturates or quaaludes, things like that. So I was pretty out of it most of the time, and I'd gone to this party, and it culminated in this gang rape. And I didn't remember that happening until I was about 3 years sober, and the thing that bothered me about it really was not that it had happened. Because I really don't think that it's the things that happen to us that leave the scars. I think it's our reaction to the things that happen to us. And the thing that bothered me when I remembered that happening was the fact that I had got up in the morning and gone to the beach as though nothing had happened. And I was 18 years old, see. And that was the thing that really made me so sad when I remembered that, is that I couldn't afford to care. And, and I think that that's, just what happens. I mean, I suppose that I thought at the time, you're such a piece of crap that this is the kind of thing that would happen to you. Anyway, moving right along, a lot of other things happened, but I think you've gotten the picture. I came to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous in the summer of 1974 when I was 23 years old. There were not a lot of young people in AA back in 1974. There were not a lot of attractive young people in AA like I see tonight, and I was one of the more unattractive of the unattractive young people. Now, some of this had to do with the fact that I weighed 230 pounds and I was wearing a $5.99 granny dress from Zodi's and a pair of Zoris. And I don't think I'd bathed in a while and had sort of bad haircut, but the thing that really made me unattractive was my attitude, which was very bad. And I'm not one of those people who walked into Alcoholics Anonymous and thought, God, I'm home. I've been looking for this all of my, you know. I didn't get it. Now, actually, I suppose that I did get it. I had an impression of Alcoholics Anonymous, which I still have today, by the way. I looked at Alcoholics Anonymous in the summer of 1974, and I thought to myself, it's good, it's decent, it's wholesome, it's unhip. People seem to be nice to one another here. And it was the first place that I thought that if I could ever actually admit that maybe I wanted some of these things, that I could say them here, and that you wouldn't laugh at me. But in 1974, I couldn't admit that. And I'm not going to say that I slipped in 1974. I just never got sober. Pretty much like what Bob was talking about. I just didn't get sober. I mean, I get like a day or two or something, but I didn't get a book or a sponsor. I hung on the wall. I dared people to come near me. Most of them didn't. When the holidays rolled around in 1974, I thought to myself, I'm not sober anyway, and there's certainly no point in sticking around this outfit for the holidays, and so I left. And my intention was to come back right after New Year's. My birthday is March 3rd, so it took a little longer than I had anticipated. Anyhow, I came back on March 3rd, and I believe that God does speak through people, and my angel was sent to me on March 4th of 1975. I was in a meeting at the Radford Street Clubhouse in North Hollywood, and a guy named Bob Earl that I had met the year before bagged me up against the wall in that meeting, and he said to me, "Look, punk, you have a serious problem with alcohol and drugs, and you better damn well get sober or you're gonna die." And he backed it up by saying, "And if you don't get sober, I'm going to break your jaw." Now, I don't think that he would say that to me today, and I certainly didn't even think then that he would break my jaw. I just sort of knew that he could. Because he was really psycho then. I didn't understand why he was taking any sort of interest in my case, and quite frankly, he has no explanation for it either. I guess God just sent him to me. And anyway, I started calling him, and the amazing thing was I continued to call him, because every time I called him, he would tell me to do something that I didn't want to do, which was most any activity involving any kind of action. And because before I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, my response to life was no. I mean, it's pretty hard to do stuff when you drink wine and take Reds anyhow, but I was not fond of being here or doing anything, and it wasn't like I wanted to spring into action and get involved in this thing. I was just so sick of what I had. Anyway, he told me that I had to go to 7 to 9 meetings a week and sit in the front row and be responsible for my chair and my ashtray and thank speakers whether I thought they had anything to say or not. He told me that I was essentially useless, but I had a car, and I could drive other people to meetings. I didn't like this idea. I didn't like any idea that had anything to do with interaction with other people. It wasn't like I was a big joiner or anything. I did join the SDS once, but I was not like a big joiner. And without alcohol and drugs, I certainly didn't know how to interact with other human beings. I was no social butterfly. But I started going to these meetings, and I didn't understand what was going on here. I didn't understand why people were being nice to me. Because where I come from, if somebody is nice to you, it's because they want something, and if you're nice to somebody, it's because you want something, and I didn't understand what people were doing here because I had nothing to offer. But one day I couldn't stand it anymore. I guess I'd been sober about a month, and I finally called Bob on the phone, and I said, "Why do you care about me? Why do you care about me?" And he screamed back at me, "Because you're psycho." And, the only people who really talked to me when I was new were like the meanest guys in AA, talked to me. And I'm very grateful to those mean guys. Some of them are dead, some of them are still here. But they talked to me because I heard a woman describe how I came into Alcoholics Anonymous. It was so beautiful. She said, "I came into AA like this. Help me! Stay as far away from me as possible, but help me, please." And Bob touched on something that was very important to me. The two hardest things that I've had to learn how to say in Alcoholics Anonymous is, "I don't know," and "Will you help me?" Because when you have a genius IQ and a lot of false pride, and you don't want them to know that you don't know, it's very hard to get help, you know. And I used to resent how much help I seem to require, even now today. But I was in Israel in 1987 working on a picture, and my employer's brother was there, and he's a Christian, and I'm not a Christian, I'm a Jew. But anyway, Todd was talking about that somebody had said to him, "Hey, Todd, Jesus is a crutch." To which Todd responded, "If he's a crutch, let him be a stretcher. I'll just lay down and let him carry me." And, you know, and people say, well, AA is a crutch. And I figure if it's a crutch, let it be a stretcher. I'll just lay down, you know, because, you know, I need help. And I think the really sick people are the ones who need help and don't ask for it, or, you know, don't seek it. I mean, the world is filled with all kinds of people who could really use some help, you know, and, you know, and they don't seek it. They don't have the motivation that we have. I mean, I really think that these steps could help everybody, but most people won't seek it because they don't have a killer disease breathing down their necks, but we do. And I'm perfectly willing to allow people to be as screwed up as they want to, but I don't have to, you know, like, have them in my life. And that was a big revelation for me. You know, and I'm not talking about newcomers in AA. I mean, they're more than welcome to be in my life if they really want to, you know, help. I mean, you know, Bob was never particularly interested in my opinion about the direction he was giving me, and so consequently, if I sponsor people, I'm not really all that interested in their opinion either, you know, and to be quite honest, because I sort of assume that if somebody wants what I have, if I ask them to do what I did to get it, I would hope that they would do that. You know, because this is not an intellectual pursuit. If AA were an intellectual pursuit, we'd all do what Bob did the first night. We'd read the book and be out of here. You know, we'd cram like for college. And, you know, but this book is, you know, I mean, it's not cramming. And, you know, and it takes a long time for AA to translate from here to your heart. You know, it takes a long, long time, and you don't get it by osmosis, and you get it by practicing it over and over and over again. It's very easy to work the program when things are going my way. But things haven't always gone my way in the last 18 years. You know, I mean, AA does not exempt you from life. I mean, there are some people who say, well, you know, if you're really working the program right, you'll never feel another moment's pain. Well, that's a crock. Hopefully, if you're working the program right, you will be forced to change. And as we all know, alcoholics are not wild about change. I'm certainly not. And as it was pointed out to me, it's not change that's painful, it's resistance to change. No, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I just... You know, and the pain comes when the door is slamming and your fingers are left in it. You know, but I'm not wild about change. I want it to be the way it is. Even if it's awful, it's familiar. You know, but I've been forced. I mean, I've been forced. Alcoholics Anonymous has catapulted me into life. And I'm somebody who never wanted to participate, really. I always wanted to take the easier, softer way. And Alcoholics Anonymous has forced me to engage in the business of living. You know, I'm grateful now, but I was not grateful at the beginning. It was very hard. You know, because growing up in Alcoholics Anonymous has been very difficult for me. I came here a 24-year-old adolescent. And going through puberty in your 30s is really awful. And, you know, and now I'm having a midlife crisis. I've been going through this thing where I've been pretty lonely. Now, I look like somebody who knows everybody. And I'm one of those people that people stop on the street and ask me questions that I couldn't possibly know the answer to. I somehow look very competent. I have figured out my personality type. I'm sort of a gregarious loner. But I think what's going on here is that I'm having sort of a spiritual crisis. We're back down to no human power can do anything. And I don't think that the answer for me is filling my life up with people and more activities and more, you know, unless it's the kind of activity that involves trying to be of service to somebody else less fortunate than me. It's very hard for me to continue to feel sorry for myself if I try to help somebody who's less fortunate. Doesn't always work, but a lot of the time it does. I've had many things happen to me in the last 18 years. And I've had a lot of experience, sober experience, which is really all we have to share with one another, by the way. I mean, I started getting involved in this thing really early on, and I started trying to help people really early on, and I've always sponsored a lot of women, and the times that I've had to make amends for the assistance that I've tried to give them is when I have tried to give them advice about things that I know nothing about. We're not here to dispense advice. It's very easy to get off on that power trip of wanting to dispense advice to the less fortunate, but the truth of the matter is that all we have to share is our experience, strength, and hope, which means that if we've had an experience and we make it through clean and sober to the other side, regardless of how gracefully we've done it, we have something to share with somebody else. When I was 5 years sober, I got strung out on a practicing alcoholic. I had to have this guy, and it was a wild year, let me tell you.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think.
And it culminated during my 6th birthday week with him trying to strangle me at 6 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. Got up 7 hours later, went and took cake and talked about it, and it was a very valuable year because... tell you how I got through it. I didn't drink. I went to a meeting every day and I told the truth about what was going on with me, even though I knew I was being judged, and I wasn't being paranoid, by the way. If you think you're being judged in AA, you are. I even had one guy walk up to me during that time and he said to me, "How could you, of all people, get involved in something like that?" And I looked around and I thought, who is he talking to? You know? And my thought was, you son of a bitch, you're probably next. But I didn't say it, and I wished I had. But years later, I found out the same thing happened to him, and I was sort of secretly thrilled. Anyhow, the reason why I share that, of course, is because I am not the first nor the last member of Alcoholics Anonymous to be involved with a practicing alcoholic. I love alcoholics. Drunk and sober, I love alcoholics. And, you know, and I'm certainly not the first person in AA to ever be addicted to another human being. I know this for a fact. And, you know, but even that has, you know, really changed for me over the years. My need to hurt myself in just about every way has decreased. And now, in the time that I have remaining, I will tell you the story about how I found a loving higher power. That would be good. I didn't find it right away, by the way. I didn't feel much of anything when I came to AA, about God or anything else, really. And again, I'm not here to talk about my dysfunctional religious background. I don't have one. I was brought up Jewish. While we do put a lot of emphasis on guilt in some areas, you know, I mean, there's no concept of hell in Judaism. And, you know, I wasn't taught, you know, that I was going to, burn forever or anything like that. And, you know, my parents were pretty loose about the whole thing. But I developed a God consciousness that I had no idea that I even held until I was about 8 years sober. Anyway, when I was 6.5 years sober, right after my event with the practicing alcoholic, I launched on a program of self-improvement through Self-Will Run Riot. I would recommend this about as much as I would recommend getting involved with a practicing alcoholic. However, I also learned a great deal from this. I decided at 230 pounds, this is not an OA meeting, by the way, this is a metaphor, okay? Try to hear it as a metaphor. I decided that if I could get really thin, my life would be perfect. I mean, whatever it is that you think will fix you from the outside, you know, a Porsche, winning the lottery, new husband, new wife, new lover, you know, whatever you think it is. Ford Explorer, by the way, they work. So far. So far, being a woman in a truck is really doing it for me. My big domestic vehicle. Anyway, I decided that getting really thin would be sort of, you know, the way to go. And so I went to a fasting clinic in Santa Monica, and I lived on liquid protein and caffeine for about 5.5 months. I was stretched so tight, I was like a finely tuned piano wire. I mean, it was like, ee! I was so nuclear, I glowed. I mean, it was, you know, people said, I stayed away from you. You were so scary. Anyhow, I lost a huge amount of weight in a very short period of time. And, and the truth of the matter is that I got as beautiful as I'd always wanted to be. I got as much attention, sexual and otherwise, way more than I could handle. I used to run out of rooms just hyperventilating. I mean, it was like, turning into Cinderella almost overnight. I mean, things happened to me that had never happened to me before, and the second I stopped fasting because of the unnatural way in which I lost all this weight, I started to gain the weight back, and I gained it back at an incredible clip, and it was so awful. It was so humiliating and so painful, and because I'm an active member of Alcoholics Anonymous, I never have the option to take, 2 or 3 months off so I don't have to be in front of you. I was in front of you. And I plunged into a very deep depression, and it wasn't because I gained the weight back, it was because I'd lost it and it didn't work, because it was something from the outside. Anyway, a friend of mine said to me, look, either you go see this therapist or I'm going to kill you, because if I don't kill you, you'll only kill yourself. Now, I'm not up here to advocate therapy. Our big book says that there's lots of qualified professionals out there, and I was in a very deep depression, and I needed the help that I could get. And quite frankly, I was in too bad a shape, for anybody in AA to really have to handle me. And the way that this particular therapist was found is that a member of Alcoholics Anonymous had gone to the Bodhi Tree bookstore in LA, the metaphysical bookstore, and said, I'm looking for a therapist who believes in God. Now, AA is filled with spiritual people. I know that today because I can hear them. But if you're not ready to hear what they have to say, it doesn't matter how many spiritual people are in AA. Again, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And I went to see this dude in a turban, this guy John. I used to call him the Chic Sikh because I lived in the neighborhood with the white Sikhs, but he had left the white Sikhs in the early 70s, so he wore these very sort of chic turbans that matched his ensembles, and he was a really spiritual guy. And, I thought I came to AA completely ambivalent about God. I thought that I didn't care one way or the other. Truth of the matter was I was enraged at God. And the reason why I was so angry at God is because if you were born with all the stuff that I was born with, because I was born with everything you're supposed to have in order to make it. I was born with looks and talent and brains and opportunity. And if you were like me and you believed the way that I believed, and if by the time you were 24 years old, your entire life was in the trash dump, then it was God's fault. And I was pissed at him. What I didn't understand, which has been explained to me in Alcoholics Anonymous, is that God really does create us with free will, and he lets us do whatever it is that we need to do. And he let me take my life into the trash can, because that's what I needed to do. Bob Earl used to talk about his concept of God, that God had to be big enough to love him when he was carrying a gun down the street as loved him when he was helping a newcomer in Alcoholics Anonymous. Anyway, one day I was in this therapy, and I was furious because this was one more piece of evidence that God hated my guts. I'd gotten the thing that I wanted, and I wasn't able to keep it. And I'm shaking my fist, and I'm calling him one of those names that fellow that you owed the money to called you, the one beginning with Mother. And I was really pissed, and I said, why did he let me have this thing if he wasn't going to let me keep it? And John looked at me and he said, Ilene, have you ever considered that he allowed you to have it so you'd know it was possible when the time was right? Well, I'd never considered that. I never considered that maybe it was going to be in God's time and not mine. Now, obviously, I don't weigh 230 pounds anymore. I don't weigh what I weighed when I lost all the weight on the fast, but I've moved into my body. You know, people keep saying to me, have you lost weight? I wouldn't know. I don't own a scale. But I've moved into my body. And what I've noticed is as my dependence on my higher power has increased, my compulsivity in every area has decreased. My need to constantly fix myself with things and people and it and sex and, all of that from the outside has really decreased. And I'm having this wrestling match with myself now, I'm alone. I don't have a lover. And, you know, and the struggle is really not that difficult to keep myself, because I have ways to get sex. We all have ways to get sex. But the things that I would have to do just to get laid are of no interest to me anymore. And I never thought that I would get to that point, but that's what's happened. You know, and I don't look at any of these things as a crisis anymore. I try to... One of the things that I've tried to do for the last, God, it must be 3 or 4 years now, that have been really, really helpful to me, is that I've tried to remove my judgment from the events of my life as being either bad or good or positive or negative or black or white. And by the way, the only advantage that time in the program gives you, at least for me, is that I have 18 plus years where I can look back over the events of my life where I've actually been awake for them. And I've been able to see, even while I was still drinking and using and into my sobriety, how the pieces of my life have fit together so perfectly that every time I have needed some sort of change in my life, God has put a person or a situation in my life to act as a catalyst to move me to the next place. And at the time, certainly this incident with this weight gain, weight loss, all of that looked like one of the worst things that had ever happened to me, but it led me to this different concept of a higher power, so who was I to judge it? Alcoholism of and by itself is not something that I think any of us would have chosen as a life. But because we're sober alcoholics, we get to have the gift of this program and this way of life that most people would not embrace because, as I said, they don't have the same motivation we do. I continue to go to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. Sometimes it's really hard. I'm older. I'm more tired now. I'd rather be home in front of the tube. But I continue to go to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous for a very varied number of reasons. One of them is because I need them. 2 is because I like them. And 3 is because of something that's very important for people of my length of sobriety, which is that most of the time, except when I'm operating a motor vehicle, I look and act less like an alcoholic than I ever have in my whole entire life. And unlike some of my peers who no longer go to meetings, I constantly go to meetings to remind myself why that's so. The reason why I look the way I look tonight, act the way I act tonight, feel the way I feel tonight is because I'm a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and for no other reason. I'm one of the lucky ones. I had nothing when I got here, and I've been given everything since I've been here. Thank you.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs, long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.